What's going on, guys? We got a super touchy and crazy video today. So this one's called How the Irish Got So Good at Smoking British Soldiers. So obviously they're talking about the IRA and the war in the north, you know, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, I believe it was, and even longer than that actually, guys. You know, since that time there's been a lot of war bombings and stuff like that. And this video is going to describe to us how exactly they got good at smoking, is another word for killing soldiers, guys. Which is not good. We don't agree with war on this channel, guys. But, you know, obviously, you know, back then, people didn't think about it the same way. It was just a crazy time. So, this one's made by GDF, 150,000 subscribers. So, shout out to you. I think this guy might be British. Not 100% sure. But, yeah, this one should be crazy, guys. Make sure to drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys all think. And let's get it.
August 27th, 1979, a column of 4 canvas personnel carriers, as well as a Land Rover, were carrying British soldiers of the 2nd Battalion Parachute Regiment. As the vehicles approached Warren Point, in an area straddling Northern Ireland's border with the Republic, an improvised explosive device containing 500 pounds of ammonium nitrate was detonated. The explosive, stashed in milk churns and obscured by hay bales, ignited cans of gasoline placed in its vicinity, turning it into an incendiary. All I remember is a flash and a rumble. There were bits of bodies around me, some of them on fire. There was this terrible silence. Then it suddenly clicked that my legs were on fire.
Whoa.
The eruption completely destroyed one of the trucks, obliterating 6 British troops. Snipers in position opened fire on the convoy. The casualties were staggering, an enormous loss indeed. The surviving troops rallied to secure a perimeter. A helicopter was deployed to rescue survivors.
Jeez.
But unbeknownst to them, a second ammonium nitrate bomb flanked them from the gates of the Narrow Waters Castle. The bomb, weighing half a ton, was timed to explode 30 minutes after the first, enough time to allow the support teams to arrive. And when they did, the explosion instantly vaporized 12 more soldiers.
Whoa.
I need to find
this is the most insane thing I've ever seen. I didn't know any of this, guys, and I should have probably, you know, said in the beginning of the video, like, you know, obviously living in Ireland my whole life, I've kind of heard about the Troubles, but I've never really researched it that much. This is insane, guys. Whoa.
We don't have 18 identifiable bodies. We reached this count by the only method we can, taking the numbers missing away from the survivors. No nation has a greater tradition of guerrilla warfare than Ireland.
Yeah, and that's the thing, guys. It was guerrilla warfare because it was basically like, you know, I don't want to compare them to them, but it's basically like, you know, terrorists in other countries like ISIS and stuff like that, because the guerrilla warfare in Cuba as well, that kind of guerrilla warfare is very hard to defeat. Like, armies can't defeat it. It's very tough.
Our history is full of examples of its successful use. For the better part of a century, the Irish have resisted foreign occupation, making their struggle for independence one of the longest lasting in world history. It's hard to exaggerate the deep roots which have underpinned the massive bloodshed that has characterized life in Ireland up to the very end of the 20th century.
Jeez.
Ancestral history shapes the guiding principles of wars for liberation, and the Irish War of Independence, though massively overlooked, is no different. From the Anglo-Norman invasion of the 12th century to the days of Henry VIII and beyond, Ireland was plundered. By an accident of geography, Ireland would be the first experiment in a model for colonial conquest the world over. And thus, the history of Ireland shaped the history of the world to the present day. Much like how access to a reliable news source shapes the world around us. I'd like to introduce my audience to an exciting breakthrough in news media.
We're gonna skip on, guys, but go over and check out his channel. I already said it, GDF. Check them out, guys.
It wasn't until Queen Elizabeth's ascension to the throne in 1558 that English policy shifted from merely conquering Ireland to replacing the Irish. In other words, the British Empire conducted an earnest genocide of the natives. In
We don't like that here, guys. I'll tell you that much. We don't like that here, bro.
1566, Sir Henry Sidney arrived in Dublin to assume the role of Lord Deputy. Sidney, who described the Irish as a sort of barbarous people odious to God and man, would make it a priority to pacify the countryside. Upon his march on Cork in 1569, Sidney proclaimed he was burning all the corn that was gathered and spoiling the rest, and henceforth, the targeting of the food supply became a go-to resort.
Of course.
The curse of God was so great, and the land so barren both of man and beast, that whosoever did travel from the one end onto the other of all Munster should not meet any man, woman, or child, nor yet see any beast, but the very wolves, the foxes, and other like ravening beasts. Many of them lay dead, being famished. A combination of slaughter and starvation depleted the population thoroughly, and by the 1580s, the historian Richard Burleth estimated that the native Irish population would be reduced by 30%, the land wasted, and the towns laid ruin.
Terrible. Terrible.
Allow me to quote military historian Robert Asprey from his multi-volume history of guerrilla warfare, War in the Shadows. Terror is the kissing cousin of force, and, real or implied, is never far removed from the pages of history. To define and condemn terror from a peculiar social, economic, political, and emotional plane is to display a self-righteous attitude that, totally unrealistic, is doomed to be disappointed by harsh facts.
But the thing is, guys, they would call them terrorists in the UK, but in Ireland, people here at that time would have called them freedom fighters. You know, a lot of people. Not everyone, though. Right?
Feudal government of the Middle Ages rested on force, as opposed to the people's consent, often on terror exercises through the man-made will of God reinforced by hangman's noose or executioner's axe. No student of the period can seriously condemn the protesting peasant as a terrorist. Whether a single peasant who in the furious frustration picked up a scythe and severed the tax-collecting bailiff's head from his body, or the group of peasants who grabbed pitchforks to stand against the king's soldiers, the effort, more often than not, was not terror, but rather counter-terror.
Yeah, counter-terrorism. Yeah, right. That's, yeah.
Centuries of British rule also culminated in a period of terrible famines from 1845 to 1855, following the failure of the potato crop, in which 1 million died and 2 million fled.
That's not 100% true, guys. The British people had food in Dublin. They just didn't distribute it to the rest of the land, guys. There was actually a lot of food in Ireland at that time, but they just didn't distribute it properly because it was sort of a genocidal act. A lot of people don't understand that's actually kind of true as well. I was listening to a lot of historians from the US talk about that, so that's kind of pretty accurate. But, you know, times have changed, obviously, but it's just like, that's crazy at the time, you know.
Those who remained lived in conditions unmatched for misery in Europe, except among Russian serfs. Another major historical event for Ireland came just a few years later, in 1866, when Swedish chemist Alfred Nobel stabilized nitroglycerin into a portable explosive, inventing dynamite. And just a year later, a group of Irish Republicans bombed Clerkenwell Prison in London, killing 12. By 1883, Irish Republicans were bombing London into oblivion, in what is now called the Dynamite Wars. In January 1919, a group of Irish volunteers received a tip that a shipment of gelignite, an explosive more powerful than dynamite, was to pass near the Salaheadbig quarry. For 5 long days, the men laid waiting in the shamrock green fields by the quarry. Finally, on January 21st, 1919, a horse-drawn cart laden with 100 pounds of explosives appeared, accompanied by 2 armed constables of the Royal Irish Constabulary. The volunteers promptly shot them and made off with the loot. If there had to be dead cops at all, 6 would have created a better impression than a mere 2.
Damn.
And on that very same day, the Dáil Éireann, or the First Irish Parliament, issued a Declaration of Independence. It was at this time that the First Anglo-Irish War began, and a new ragtag force, calling itself the Irish Republican Army, had declared war on the British.
That's like the real IRA. That's like the beginning days of like getting independence in the country, you know. If that didn't happen, guys, there probably wouldn't be independence ever, right? You know, we'd be speaking with that kind of funny British accent.
Irish independence would never be attained by constitutional means. When you're up against a bully, you've got to kick him in the guts.
Yeah, that's true.
Though the IRA wouldn't exceed 15,000 members and only had a fighting capacity of 3,000, Michael Collins, the de facto leader and national hero, would create a formidable army practically out of nothing. Fighters would be organized into brigades, battalions, and companies, as well as flying columns of up to 30 men trained in guerrilla warfare, particularly hit-and-run raids, terrorism, and assassination. In 1920, they killed 176 police, as well as 54 soldiers. They blew up police stations, military barracks, courthouses, and tax collectors' offices. Aside from direct action, they also waged psychological warfare. The police must not be tolerated socially. They must be shown and made feel how base are the functions they perform and how vile is the position they occupy. In order to effectively liquidate his enemies, Collins kept a personal team of 12 shooters known as the 12 Apostles. It began with a dozen members, but it later grew, after which it would simply be called the Squad. These were full-time paid assassins. At least 6 squad members were made available at any given time to be deployed for what they called extreme action. Collins justified assassination by stating, "We had no jails, and we therefore had to kill all spies, informers, and double-crossers." In retaliation, British troops and police officers rampaged through towns and burned homes and businesses. This only engendering greater support for the guerrillas, the usual pattern. This bloody conflict, which claimed thousands of lives, ended in considerable success for the Republicans, and through the work of Michael Collins, a peace was negotiated culminating in the Anglo-Irish Treaty of 1921, leading to the partition of Ireland. The Irish Free State was born. Unfortunately for Collins, his support for the treaty cost him his life, as he was assassinated by anti-treaty partisans.
Hey, shout out to Donegal as well, guys. Donegal is actually class. A lot of good-looking women are from there as well. But also not just that, guys, because, that's not the most important thing from there. Donegal is, up in the north as well. So the ability to, cut, shove it back quite far. 6 counties compared to 26 is a good trade-off. And we have most of the land as well.
When they heard of his death, 1,000 anti-treaty Republicans in a Free State prison spontaneously kneeled to recite the Rosary in tribute to a man who had been their leader before he became their enemy.
Yep.
The IRA came a long way from the days of the 1919 war, where they still proved to be a formidable force who had achieved impressive gains, including a free state in the South. But the decades afterward were a period of persistent honing of their skills, namely acquiring weapons and making powerful bombs. The notorious decision to overturn prisoner of war status for Republican prisoners resulted in the now famous hunger strikes. In 1981, a standoff between prisoners led by Bobby Sands and British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher ultimately resulted in the deaths of 10. The IRA, who had by this point split into 2 factions, the official IRA and the provisional IRA, blamed Thatcher's intransigence for their slow death by starvation. And now, the hunt was on. The official IRA had scarcely any guns at all and sought to put their militant past behind them. The provisional IRA, or Provos, on the other hand, would assume the role of fighting the British and Protestant paramilitary groups. We receive our support from the nationalist people, and it is our job to defend them. On September 15, 1984, Patrick Magee, a volunteer for the Provisional IRA, checked into room 629 of the Grand Hotel in Brighton, England. After unscrewing a hardwood panel underneath a bathtub, Magee inserted a powerful gelignite bomb wrapped in cellophane with a parking meter timer set for 24 days, 6 hours, and 36 minutes later. Precisely when Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher was set to be in the exact same room. And at 2:45 a.m. on October 12th, the bomb went off, blowing out the front of the hotel during a Conservative Party conference. The explosion narrowly missed their intended target, but did succeed in killing 5 others. But, as an oft-repeated IRA statement put it, "Today we were unlucky. But remember, we only have to be lucky once. You will have to be lucky always."
Yeah, that's a really famous quote that people say in Ireland, just to all the Americans and Asian people watching this. People say that quite a bit here. They're like, yeah. I don't know if that's a famous phrase before this, or was that made famous by that guy, by the Provisional IRA in its public statement. But I think it might have been made famous by the Provisional IRA, guys, because that's a super crazy phrase, guys, and very powerful statement. We don't have to be lucky always. You have to be lucky all the time. We only have to be lucky once. Crazy, guys. What a wild, that is such a powerful statement, man. Damn.
Give Ireland peace, and there will be no more war. Patrick Magee would be convicted for planting the bomb, but he would serve only 14 years, since as a result of the Good Friday Agreement, he was released from prison in 1999. At the height of the Troubles in the 70s and 80s, the two primary sources of weapons was the United States and Libya. Fundraisers in the US, a country with a massive Irish population, provided up to $11 million a year to the IRA. In 1975, British Prime Minister Harold Wilson denounced, quote, misguided Irish Americans for their support. The fact is that most of the modern weaponry now reaching the terrorists in Northern Ireland are of American origin, possibly as much as 55% of them.
I mean, of course, it's America. They supply the guns to all wars, man. You know what I mean? That's just, they have the most firearms. It's ridiculous how many guns they have in the US, guys. This is crazy. And they gave them to Irish people?
It's no wonder that the Armalite 15 was considered a favorite of the IRA arsenal.
Yeah.
Aside from ARs, the arsenal also included M60 machine guns and even Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifles, which Provos used to snipe British soldiers and officers of the Royal Ulster Constabulary.
Whoa.
These marksmen spurred the sniper at work sign seen in Northern Ireland. Between 1990 and the 1997 ceasefire, 9 British troops were marked for death by these assassins. The IRA also received massive shipments of thousands of detonators from the US, which were vital to their bombing campaign, which peaked in 1972 at 4 a day. But most of the weaponry in the IRA arsenal decommissioned after Good Friday came from Libya. Between 1972 and 1975 alone, Libya, under the leadership of Muammar Gaddafi, supplied some $3.5 million to the IRA through London banks. In March 1973, the Irish Navy arrested IRA Chief of Staff Joe Cahill aboard the Claudia, a ship sailing toward the Irish coast carrying 5 tons of weapons.
Whoa.
The load included 750 rifles and machine guns, 500 hand grenades, 100 cases of anti-tank mines, 230 kilos of gelignite, as well as detonating cords. And this was just one shipment. Gaddafi also furnished the IRA with heavy machine guns, including Russian Dishkas, which were used to shoot
Dishkas are lethal, man. They're crazy.
down a British Lynx helicopter in 1988.
Oh my god.
In another attack in October 1989, a Dishka was used on an RUC car, with one of the bullets piercing the gas tank, killing Constable Michael Marshall. But perhaps most
Dishka's wild weapon. They use it in Afghanistan and stuff.
importantly of all was the Czechoslovakian-made Semtex explosive, similar to malleable and highly explosive C4. A 1986 shipment from Libya would be the biggest yet, containing 80 tons of weapons, including RPGs, 10 surface-to-air missiles, and 1 ton of Semtex, which supplied all Semtex bombings after 1986. The weapons were promptly unloaded onto tractors and towed into secret IRA bunkers.
Jeez.
The IRA's MO was not targeting of civilians, but British government officials and especially soldiers and police. By 1971, the IRA had set off 153 bombs, targeting Protestant businesses in Belfast, avoiding civilian casualties when possible. But as 1971 commenced, the bombing campaign accelerated rapidly. And in that year alone, more than 1,000 bombs killed 50 people and injured hundreds. The early days of the Troubles saw massive protests and marches by civil rights groups, championing the cause of Catholic freedom from Protestant oppression. As the police and British Army clamped down on these protests through beatings, raids, and rubber bullets on protesters, they quickly drew the ire of Republicans. Their solution was the petrol bomb, and young Republicans from the Bogside Republican Youth would distract British troops to try to corral them into vulnerable positions where they would pelt them with jars filled with gasoline and a cloth wick which was lit before it was thrown. Of the 3,000 police serving in the opening of the Troubles, 10% of them suffered burns from these incendiaries. The bombardiers only became more clever as time went on. In the 1970s, firebombs were contained in cardboard boxes with a wooden peg sticking out. Inside, the wooden peg was held by a clothespin. When the peg was removed, the clothespin closed, connecting 2 wires leading to a battery-powered heating element, which ignited the incendiary, causing a massive fireball. In 1973, the cardboard was replaced by cassette boxes and contained a watch timer. These firebombs could now be set to explode at specific and carefully calculated times.
Jeez.
Of course, we're only seeing the usual pattern. As I've covered in my videos on the Iraq and Vietnam insurgencies, the common language of small bands of poorly armed and poorly trained fighters is the IED.
Yeah, like IEDs are lethal as well, but Same as the insurgents and stuff like that in Iraq, Afghanistan, and also in Vietnam, Cuba, all these different places. It's always like small groups of people that are just like the most lethal. That's crazy.
It's hardly a new weapon. The improvised explosive device was used during the Second World War by anti-Nazi resistance groups. The term became regular parlance with the advent of the provisional IRA bombing campaign beginning in the late 1960s. Indeed, so closely connected with the IRA campaign were IEDs that you could be forgiven for calling them Irish explosive devices. With the civil rights movement and British suppression, as well as the IRA's response, the British Army commenced Operation Demetrius in 1971. Demetrius was the program of internment of suspected IRA fighters. The number of interned varies, but it is of little doubt that the number ranges in the thousands. It was internment that prompted the demonstrations in Derry on Sunday, January 30th, 1972. It was here that members of the Parachute Regiment opened fire on unarmed protesters, killing 14, an incident immortalized as the Bloody Sunday Massacre. Indeed, this massacre even overshadowed the earlier massacre in August 1971, where Parachute Regiment troops again mowed down civilians in Belfast, killing 11.
Jeez.
It's no surprise that when the IRA hit the Parachute Regiment in August 1979, they were out for blood. It was personal. As we have seen with other resistance movements, internment and mass killings do not dampen support, but only makes recruitment soar. And that's exactly what happened following Bloody Sunday. And after Bloody Sunday came Bloody Friday. In just 2.5 hours on July 21st, 1972, no fewer than 22 bombs went off in Belfast, with 2 of them killing 9 people.
22?
This attack would utilize the weapon that the IRA pioneered, though they get little credit for it. At 3:10 p.m., a car bomb exploded outside of a bus depot on Oxford Street, killing 2 British soldiers and 4 Protestant bus workers.
Whoa.
At 3:20, another car containing 23 kilos of bombs exploded at a row of shops, killing 3 people. And those were just 2 of them. Belfast was under siege. As the Belfast Telegraph put it, this city has not experienced such a day of death and destruction since the German Blitz. Indeed, Belfast had become a full-blown war zone. What follows are the words of journalist Peter Taylor, quoting an unnamed police officer.
Wow, that's insane, guys. I've never heard about any of this stuff. This is wild, man. Wow. So much death, man. It's just crazy, man. You know, land. People want their land, you know.
First thing that caught my eye was a torso of a human being lying in the middle of the street. One of the victims was a soldier I knew personally. He had his arms and legs blown off, and some of his body had been blown through the railings. One of the most horrendous memories for me was seeing a head stuck to a wall. A couple of days later, we found vertebrae and a rib cage on the roof of a nearby building. Seagulls were diving onto it. I tried to put it at the back of my mind for 25 years. Even Brendan Hughes, an officer commanding for the Provisional IRA, believed that the operation was a failure. What happened on Bloody Friday was a disaster. It was largely the fault of the IRA. There was never an attempt at any time to kill people with the car bomb, because the people who were putting the car bombs there had their own families shopping there as well. Despite this, the IRA had killed innocents. And it was blunders such as this one, which prompted the IRA to institute a warning system whereby press would be notified through coded messages that a bombing was to take place in a certain area, which helped the IRA avoid scores of potential casualties, assuming, of course, they were civilians. When it came to British forces, it was open season. Such as in December 1979, when a large improvised roadside bomb blew a British Army Land Rover into the air, instantly killing 4 soldiers. Or May 1981, when a 1,000-pound bomb was detonated via remote control, destroying an armored vehicle and 5 soldiers along with it. Or July 1983, when 4 soldiers perished after a 600-pound roadside bomb exploded, throwing another armored Land Rover into the air. December 1985, a Royal Ulster Constabulary base was destroyed by a 100-pound bomb, with 2 guards shot dead. December 1985, a Royal Ulster Constabulary base was destroyed by a 100-pound bomb, with 2 guards shot dead. Or perhaps the Lisburn bombing, when 6 British soldiers who had just completed a half-marathon in town were struck by a bomb planted under their vehicle. The van was destroyed, and all 6 on board were killed.
There's just so many, guys. Like, don't even remember them teaching us about this ever in school or anything like that. Like ever. There's just so many. Like I couldn't even believe this. There's so many. Wow.
And you can't forget the Ballygalway bus bombing, when a roadside Semtex bomb exploded on a bus containing 36 light infantry soldiers. 8 soldiers were killed. Following this bombing, all British Army soldiers in the area were required to transport troops via helicopter.
Oh my god.
But still, more troops would be killed a little more than a year later,
crazy.
when the Royal Marine School of Music was bombed, with the roof caving in, killing 11 Marines. Among the most ambitious bombings by the Provisional IRA, rivaled perhaps only by the attempted assassination of Margaret Thatcher, was the bombing of 10 Downing Street, which housed the office of the Prime Minister, John Major. Aside from being the most well-organized and well-disciplined insurgent group the world has ever seen, the IRA were also, without a doubt, the craftiest. Aside from making their own bombs, Provos would make a wide array of weaponry from scratch. All homemade explosive devices were designed under the authority of the IRA's engineering department. From the small, a drogue bomb or improvised anti-armor grenade, essentially a baked beans can filled with a half-pound of Semtex with a small parachute and fin to stabilize it, to the medium, a homemade RPG or improvised projected grenade, made from a steel tube with a wooden hand grip and a propellant chamber, which launched packets of digestive cookies out the back. This acted as the countermass to reduce recoil. The explosive contained Semtex, packed into a food can. To the large, and perhaps most impressive, Mark X mortar. On February 7, 1991, while Prime Minister John Major met with his cabinet to discuss the Gulf War, a white Ford Transit parked outside of 10 Downing. The driver then got out and drove away on a motorcycle. 3 homemade mortars, sitting in the rear, had been timed to launch 3 bombs in quick succession through a hole carved in the van's roof.
What?
One of the bombs descended right on target,
Dude,
but
are
hit
the
a
IRA like the modern, like the old MacGyver or something? How the hell do they even think about that?
tree, causing it to explode in a garden. The explosion sent the whole cabinet ducking for cover and created a crater several meters wide. Had it not hit that tree, the cabinet may very well have been killed on the spot. The other 2 bombs were more off target, landing near a police post. Let the British government understand that, while nationalist people in the 6 counties are forced to live under British rule, the British cabinet will be forced to live in bunkers. These were far from the IRA's only assassination attempts. Others were successful, such as when the first Earl Mountbatten of Burma boarded his boat, the Shadow 5, with family and friends, including his daughter and grandson. Unbeknownst to him, a 50-pound remote-control bomb had been planted on board and detonated as they set sail.
Oh, come on,
the boat
bro.
was pulverized, and Mountbatten's legs were blown off.
Bro.
Also killed in the attack were his grandson Nick and his friend.
And the,
A member of the royal family, Mountbatten's death would make worldwide headlines, especially since it occurred on the same day as the Warren Point massacre.
God, bro. That's so sad. That's so sad, guys. Not to even to mention this, guys, the Gaza Strip as well. That's another sad, super sad case. God, just unbelievable, guys. They killed, I'm guessing his kids got killed as well. This is crazy, bro.
The IRA had killed Louis Mountbatten, nearly killed Thatcher and now John Major, but the IRA was far from finished. The rationale for the next and largest bombings would be economic damage.
Huh.
Unlike present-day jihad-inspired attacks, the IRA attempted to avoid maximum civilian casualties. Instead, it focused on what it perceived to be a major weakness in the UK economy, the faltering British and European insurance industry. Essentially, insurers were unable to accurately calculate loss exposure from terrorist bombings. Therefore, since the buildings the IRA destroyed could not be insured, the more destruction wreaked on buildings in England, the higher the bill for the British government. At 9:20 at night on April 10, 1992, a white Ford Transit parked at the building of the Baltic Exchange, a major London shipping market. Inside the van was a bomb containing ammonium nitrate and sugar, ignited by 100 pounds of Semtex. In all, the bomb weighed 1 ton.
That's crazy.
The explosion killed 3 people and completely destroyed the 13-story tower. The cost and damages from this one bomb alone topped 800 million pounds.
Bro, take that in for a second, guys. Nearly £1 billion. That's $1 billion euro. Bro, that's one of the most insane things I've ever heard in my life. How have I never even heard about this? I've never heard taught any of this in schools in Ireland, which probably for good reason, guys. They don't want to teach us about any of this stuff. This is crazy though.
Compared with 600 million for all the damage caused by 22 years of bombing in all of Northern Ireland. A year later, in April 1993, a stolen Ford Iveco was parked at Bishopsgate.
Oh, this is wild.
Phone calls were made in order to warn police to clear civilians. Inside the van was a large 1-ton ammonium nitrate bomb. It was also the most costly of all the bombings, passing an estimated 1.4 billion pounds.
Oh my God.
Despite the IRA's warnings, Ed Henry, photographer for News of the World, was killed in the blast. Another massive explosion came in 1996 at the London Docklands. This time, another Ford Iveco, loaded with a 3,000-pound bomb containing ammonium nitrate and Semtex, exploded. It was parked in the underground parking lot of the Canary Wharf building. The bombing was preceded by a telephone warning from the IRA urging police to evacuate the area, but the bomb went off while the area was still being cleared.
Insane.
As a result, 2 people were killed, the explosion being so powerful that the 2 victims were blasted through 2 walls. The bomb left a crater 10 meters wide and over 3 meters deep. Not only did the bombing cause 100 million pounds of damage, costing insurers 170 million, the bombing drastically changed the political situation in the IRA's favor. By the end of the month, on February 28th, Prime Minister John Major resumed negotiations, even dropping the demand that the IRA begin decommissioning their weapons before talks resumed. The largest bomb detonated in England during the whole of the Troubles came on June 15, 1996, just 4 months after the bombing at Canary Wharf. It weighed a whopping 3,500 pounds.
No way.
Inside yet another Ford cargo truck, the bomb was transported to the Arundel Shopping Center. Phone calls to the press gave police 1 hour to clear the area. At 11:15 a.m., the bomb exploded, sending a large mushroom cloud at least 1,000 feet into the sky. This particular bomb killed no one, injured 200, and caused 400 million pounds worth of damage. The militant mobilization of the Provisional IRA had fizzled out by the late 90s, culminating in a 1997 ceasefire, and of course, the Good Friday Accord, signed on April 10, 1998. The accord outlined a power-sharing agreement, which famously allowed Sinn Féin to join the new administration in Northern Ireland. Through this long and tumultuous process came the decommissioning of IRA weapons. Large caches of weapons were destroyed, namely by pouring concrete into the IRA's secret bunkers. Though many doubted the extent to which the decommissioning cleared guns and bombs from the countryside, by September 2005, the IRA was considered to be rid of all of its arsenal.
The leadership of Óglaigh na hÉireann has formally ordered an end to the armed campaign. All IRA units have been ordered to dump arms.
The weapons decommissioned
Shout out to all the Walshes out there.
Constituted an arsenal fit for a small army. It contained 1,000 rifles, 2 tons of Semtex, at least 20 heavy machine guns,
Wow.
7 surface-to-air missiles,
What?
7 flamethrowers,
Wait,
12
wait. Are they Rambo, dude? What do they need surface-to-air missiles for? They're not fighting the flipping Air Force. Well, I guess they could have been.
100 detonators, 11 RPGs, handguns, over 100 grenades, and other explosives.
Grenades, like. Grenades is wild, guys. That's tough, man. Grenades, like, what the hell do you need grenades for?
But by a certain point, Sinn Féin had no other choice but to mobilize and discard weapons in favor of political means of attaining peace. They succeeded. It wasn't without errors and more bloodshed, including the 1998 Omagh bombing, carried out by the anti-Good Friday Agreement Real IRA, which killed 28 innocents, one of the worst atrocities of the Troubles. And though now Ireland, North and South, are prosperous and safe, in just very recent times the island was synonymous with death and destruction. And though even today people are killed and small bombing plots are foiled, the conflict is nowhere
Wait, hold up, really?
near what it once was.
Oh, people are still killed in, like, retaliation attacks and gang-related stuff.
Then small bombing plots
Alyssa continued details of 10,000 police officers and civilian staff as the hands of dissident Republicans. PSNI. So this still kind of going on a little bit.
foiled. The conflict
Police described petrol bomb attacking officers senseless and reckless. Wow, that's crazy. Trouble followed illegal Republican parade in Londonderry as it came the eve of visit of President Joe Biden.
Conflict is nowhere near what it once was.
Yeah.
And with the Troubles having killed thousands, it feels right that the island can breathe a little easier, at least for now.
Well, I'll tell you something, guys. In 2023, there is nothing going on in Ireland. Everyone's leaving Ireland. You know, it's very, very safe. Tourists love it here, so come all ye. If you guys want to come on tour here, it's absolutely fire. I love you guys all, man. That's a crazy... I've never heard of that ever in my life, guys. I lived here my whole life. I don't know how I never thought about that. That's crazy. Nobody could be as ruthless as the British, so I'm not surprised that the Irish gave the British a taste of their own medicine. The British did rule half the world at some point, guys, like beheaded everybody. So as an Irishman, I have to say fair play for spending the time to get all the history right and put well together. Yeah, it's a well put together video, absolutely amazing, guys. Like I said, go over and check out GDF's videos, guys. I don't know what that stands for, GDF, but you know, absolute fire, guys. Great videos. I love you guys all. I'll see you all in the next one, man. Peace.